Hello and welcome to the second annual New Jersey Youth Transition Conference. My name is Amy Yedley and I represent Values into Action New Jersey on behalf of the Youth Transition Planning Committee. We will place a registration form in the chat box for you to share your contact information so we can share the recordings and resources with you from this workshop. Please note, for those seeking continuing education credit, you're required to complete the form, as this is the contact method in which we will send you your proof of attendance. Our presenters today are Pat Miller, Alicia Pravata, and later, hopefully, John Miller will be joining us as well, Pat's son. We're going to present on the topic of success after transition, building a life worth celebrating. Ladies, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Pat Miller.
I'm Alicia Pravata.
And we are here to talk about having success after transition and building a life after 21. So I want to start with just some introductions. Again, I'm Pat. I am a mom to 3 boys. I have twin boys that are 25 years old, fraternal twins. And then I'm the mother of John, who has profound autism. And he just turned 21 in January and will be 22 this coming January. He was diagnosed at about 2 years and 9 months. And so it's been a long journey for those parents out there. And I'm hoping that sharing my story will help motivate and make everyone feel a little bit less nervous about falling off that cliff when they turn 21, because we can build a fun and exciting and rich life for these young adults. And so a little bit about me. My background is actually in hospital administration. I worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering for many years, and then I went on to work at St. Barnabas Medical Center. In between, when I had my boys, I did go back part-time and work for early intervention as an ABA in-home therapist part-time while John was younger. And I did go back and get my postdoc in applied behavior analysis from Caldwell College. When the boys were, I guess, in 2nd grade, and maybe John was closer to 9 or 10 years old, I did go back full time and became the director at St. Barnabas Medical Center, Cancer Center. And the only way I was really able to do that was because of this lovely person here that we will talk to about. But while I was at Barnabas, one of the things that I realized is just how much this community needs their healthcare needs met. And that oftentimes the only time we go to the hospital when we have a child with autism or a young adult with autism is when we're in crisis. And one of the things that I really fought hard about is, how do we make the hospital a more friendly place? And so that's not the case for families like ours. And so when I was at St. Barnabas, we did start something called the SNAP program, which is the Special Needs Ambassador program. And basically it helped create a better experience for families that came into the hospital in any part of St. Barnabas. If you were going for blood work, if you were going for an x-ray, if you were going in for a procedure, you could ask for support through an ambassador who would help just make accommodations to help that transition and that visit be a little bit easier. And then 6 years ago, I left my job at St. Barnabas and I started Beloved Bath. You can see in the background, we are at the Beloved Bath Soap Studio, and proud to report it is a service or a business that was created to have meaningful employment for individuals with autism. So we employ individuals with autism here. We actually pay them. And we also do vocational services for schools, and we will talk a little bit more about that. So a little bit about me. One can say I've spent my entire life and career advocating for John and for individuals with disabilities to get their needs met and to be able to lead a happy and fulfilling life. And that includes relationships with your family, relationships with friends, having friends with your community. And no matter how bad their deficits are, or what they are, or how profoundly they are affected, that we can provide and build a very rich life for them. So today we are going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly on how we as a family have created a support system around us throughout the years, and how one can successfully transition into adulthood and build a happy life after 21. So without further ado, let me introduce you to one of my favorite people, the daughter I never had, Alicia Pravata. And Alicia just started working with John and our family 12 years ago when she was only 18 and John was only 9 years old.
You're giving out my age.
Sorry.
No. Hi, so I'm Alicia. A little background about me. I have been in the field of ABA for 12 years now. I got into the field because of John. I'm currently a BCBA and the director of ABA therapy at FTC Kids in Little Falls. I don't know what else. John is my why, is what I say all the time. He is my why. So I'm excited to be sharing our story with you all.
So I'm sure many of you have already heard this, but I can tell you firsthand that a successful transition happens way before 21. And so, it is really about building a life that includes your child with a disability and with autism from a very young age. And, before we start going through how do we do that, what's been successful, what hasn't been successful for our journey, I just wanted to quickly review a little bit of the details about autism, just in case we forgot them. But, right now, the CDC estimates that 1 in every 44 children are diagnosed with autism. It affects 1 in every 35 in New Jersey, making it the most rapidly growing disability in the United States. We know boys are 4 times more likely than girls to be afflicted. We know that there's no medical detection, no cure, and that it knows no ethnic, racial, or social economic boundaries. So basically anyone from any family can get this diagnosis. And I'm sure there's not one person on this call who doesn't know someone or has some connection to autism. More than 3.5 million Americans live with autism spectrum disorder. So, how is it characterized? We know that we see lots of deficits and impairments, especially around social communication. We see restricted repetitive patterns of behavior. We see individuals having difficulty interacting with others, building relationships, using language, regulating their emotions, and understanding others' points of view. And the reason why I want to stress those deficits is because when you think about building relationships, so many of those are really, hinging on those key deficits that our children have. And so how do we get them to build those relationships when they don't have the language and they can't tell us what they want to do or what they don't want to do? And so oftentimes it's so difficult that it becomes almost, you become defeated. And so, one of the hardest things I think about being a mother of a child with autism who does not have a lot of language or pretty much any language is that, we really don't know how they're feeling, and medical issues, especially as they grow older, become really hard. And so, you're always guessing, well, if we see disruptive behavior, is it because he has a headache? Is it because he has a sore throat? Is there something going on? And, he can't tell us simply my throat hurts or I have a headache. And if you think about when you're not feeling well, and if you're being pushed to do something or you don't want to do something, it's really hard to get them to be integrated. And I think that as a mom is probably one of the hardest things about having autism, especially as they become adults, because you don't know what's going on. And oftentimes that medical condition can manifest itself in disruptive or aggressive behavior. And we saw, a really big example of this with John a few years ago, about 5 years ago. We started to see some real aggressive behavior. And, a little bit about John, although he has a lot of these deficits, he's usually a happy-go-lucky kid. And especially as a young child, you could take him anywhere. And he was pretty much easygoing. That all changed when they hit puberty. We'll get there. But basically, he was having lots and lots of disruptive behavior. And we started to see things like him leaning over a table, pushing his stomach into a table, one point opening a window and trying to jump out a window or leaning over a window. And what we realized is he was having really horrible gastric pains. And he ended up being, after a colonoscopy and endoscopy showed us he had horrible ulcers going down his esophagus, and he was having so much pain in his throat and stomach due to H. pylori. How did he get H. pylori? We don't know. All we know is that he was in extreme amounts of pain, and the only way he could tell us that is through his aggressive behavior. And so, we started to think about systems and ways to look at when we see that disruptive behavior. could there be something medical? And so we have a few easy strategies we always do. If we start seeing some of that, we get the same checkouts. We go to the dentist, is it his teeth? We go to the GI doctor, is it something GI that's bothering him? And, we also see if we give him medicine like Motrin or Tylenol, does it get better? Because that's a pain of some sort. And so again, lots and lots of guessing games, especially as they get older. So when we're trying to say, take your kids out into the community, do things with them, because we have these unexpected aggressions, disruptive behaviors, things that can happen or not happen because we can't really understand what's going on, there's a lot of fear. And, as a family, and especially as a mom, a lot of times you don't want to go out and do things or go into the community because there's that fear of the unexpected, and it paralyzes even the best of us at times. And so when we start thinking about what parents get bogged up with, you think about, you have to do services, you have to find the right educational system, you have to find home therapists, you need to find help, you need to find babysitters, dealing with the lack of communication skills, dealing with disruptive or aggressive behavior, it almost becomes impossible to do anything else. So if I could look back, one of the things and most important lessons I think I learned as a mom, and for those of you who have younger children, is that, you want to think of a few key points. The first is, if you see a behavior that your child is engaging in, and it's something that you don't want to see when they're 21. And I remember an expert in the field came over and did an evaluation. John was little. He was like 2.5, and he was running around doing all this cute stuff and sitting on my lap. And, she was like, oh, no, that's not going to look so cute when he's 18 or he's 17. And so I remember thinking, wow, that was harsh. But you know what I realized is, things that take maybe a year or even like a week or an hour for a typical child can take years to teach a child with autism. And so if we're teaching them not to stamp their feet or hit mom when we don't want to give them something, we do want to try to stop that when they're little, and we can control it and pick them up and say, don't do that, versus when they're 18 and 20 and they're, overpowering you. And so lesson number one, any behaviors that you don't want to see as they're older, you try to nip in the butt when they're younger as much as you possibly can. Again, I was on a parent, I was a younger mom, and there was an older parent board at the school that my son goes to. And I remember this mom who was, 5 feet tall. She got up and that's exactly what she said. She raised her hand and she said, look, I'm 5 feet. My son is now 200 pounds and 6'4". Okay. So before, when I could say no, now I can't, and he will overpower me. So the only thing I have is a history of him learning to listen and understanding why he can and cannot do stuff and what the rules are. And I think that was a very powerful image that I still think about. 2 is to integrate your child with autism in all family functions, no matter how difficult. And I find myself saying this more and more as John turned 21, okay? Because it's really hard to integrate, right? It's really hard to take John to soccer games and baseball games. And when the twins were doing all these sports, it was very easy. Let's leave him home with grandma, or let's take turns. You go one time, my husband, I'll go to the next game. And what we realized is no, we really need to take John. He needs to learn to sit by the sidelines. And you know what? We did it very simply when he was young. We took a blanket, we brought toys, we brought food, and we made it fun so that he would not dislike going to these games. And, I have to say, John sat through many, many games. And as he got older, what did that help with? He now swims Special Olympics. When you swim anywhere, but especially when you swim in a Special Olympics meet, there's a lot of waiting, right? There's a lot of waiting for you to get in the pool for a few minutes, right? And so if you're not, and you haven't learned, and you're not good at waiting, you're not going to be able to participate in any kind of sports. And so when you think about, all right, at 3, does it really matter? Or think about how it fits at 7 and at 9 and at 15. And so, we're happy to report that John, swims a 400 meter now in Special Olympics. And it was not anything we ever thought he could do. And along those same lines is that practice makes perfect, right? So the more you do it, the more exposure they get, the more positive you can make the experience, the more he's going to like it. Kids don't like to do what they're not good at. Adults don't like to do what they're not good at, right? So, when I think about John and I think about, when we sort of branched out of swimming, because he loves to swim, and we said, all right, let's try this soccer league. John was like 9, right? And we took him to top soccer in town in West Orange. It was the first little soccer league. I'll never forget. I brought him out on the field and he's looking at me like, what are we doing here? No words, but the look was enough. Like, where's the pool? Don't want to be on the soccer fields. Okay. And again, it took many, many years, but guess what? John still plays on that soccer field with the same buddy that he was paired with the same coach, and he actually enjoys himself now. And so, oftentimes I'll say, oh, why don't you come to this soccer or join this basketball league? And they're like, oh no, he doesn't like that. No, he probably doesn't initially, but you have to give it some time, and you have to practice, and you have to let them learn the skills so that and even some of the skills, they're not playing games. I mean, these are like clinics, right? Yeah. So they're learning how to kick the ball, they're learning how to dribble a ball, they're learning how to take a foul shot. But you know what? It gets them in a gym, it gets them on a field, it gets them be part of a team, they get a uniform, and they feel engaged in the community. And it's so easy to lose that. And then all of a sudden you're 21 and now what, right? And so when I say it starts younger, it starts really young. And so my advice to all your young moms out there is to take your kids and try to get them in as many activities, because it teaches so many of the soft skills, the waiting, the turn taking, the imitation, skills that John has worked on for years to learn in school. But the fruition of that is now at 21, he can imitate and he can follow directions, and he doesn't need an ABA therapist standing next to him holding his hands, because he's learned those skills. And, as much as you can, find help. I mean, Alicia was young. Even before her, I had a high school helper that I had gotten out of high school, Montclair High School. She was looking for a babysitter. And you know what? I didn't leave her alone with John, but I gave myself some help. And so that we took the time to train this person, to work with Alicia, to work with these other helpers, who then become invested, who then build a relationship with your child, and you hope can last for many years like this one has. And then lastly is find what's important to you and what's important to your family. Okay. Because what's important to you and your family is what you need to help your child with autism love also. Okay. If there's something that's really important to you, for example, for us, we're Roman Catholic, it was very important for John to get his first communion. Okay. And you know what, when I went to the school, when I talked to other people, like, no way, can't do it. He's never going to be able to do it. Right. And it's just disappointing to hear that. And he probably can't do it, but is there a way to still get the sacrament and still work with the church to be able to make it happen? And guess what? It did. I went to the priest and I said, explain the situation, and they wanted John to sit through the classes. I'm like, there's no way it's going to happen. He's a non-reader. Okay. He's not going to be able to learn any of those prayers, but I want him to get his first communion. And so what he did, we came up with a creative solution. I said, I will work with coming up with the curriculum. What we need is practice. We need to go into the church every week for weeks upon weeks before he gets his first communion and practice the kneeling, the standing, what the mass looks like, and when and how to get a first communion. And you know what? Priest was wonderful. He opened the church up every Monday night. We got paired with a 5th grade CCD class. They became the buddies to John and 2 other kids with autism, and they loved it. So their CCD class was going to the church, working with these 3 boys, helping them learn when to kneel, when to stand, when to say whatever prayers they could, but most importantly, how to walk down the church and receive the Holy Communion in the hands and take it. And taste it, and actually be able to try it, because we know, especially trying new foods when they're little is not easy. So John received his first communion. They did a special mass for just these 3 boys with autism, and that entire 5th grade CCD class was there, which was just so lovely, lovely for them, lovely for us. Again, another example of how do you build a community around your child so that you can do what's important to you. And I remember a family saying to me, oh, I don't know how you did that. That's so great. I wish my son could get his first communion. Again, you just have to make sure that you talk to your church, talk to people who've done it. There's a great resource in Newark that, does, all of that kind of ministry stuff, and they will help you. There are resources out there. And so what is it? Is it first communion? Is it, going on a family vacation? That's another thing. We love to travel. Luckily, Alicia loves to travel too. And so going on vacation is important. And so we've done lots and lots of practice. We've done short trips, we've done long trips, but here's John. He's gone to Florida. He's gone to the Bahamas. He's gone to Italy. I mean, things that we never, ever thought could be possible. Are they without any bumps and hiccups? Absolutely not. So we can talk about some of those stories. But, we thought we'd share a little video about, showing you a little bit of the photos of what a rich life for a young man with autism can look like, and then talk about some of the issues that come along with that. Bear with us.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, I have a comment, and some questions came through the chat. I'll wait till the end, but one comment is great advice, including your child in all activities, so it becomes just part of their normal experience.
Yep. Unfortunately, we wait too long. And then at 21, we want to take them to the movies and we want them to come on vacation. And it's like, so really, really important to do it when they're younger, no matter how hard it can be. Worst case scenario, you leave early. I mean, my husband and I took separate cars to a lot of events just to be safe.
Bear with us. I just screen share.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Keep
It's not
going.
working. Yeah. Okay. So the video just showed John in all these fun places that we've done over the years, but then it also showed some of the, negative sides that are hard, when you have a child with autism. And so, when one of our trips to Italy, we did go to Italy with him 3 times, I think, yep. Right? One of our trips for Italy was during the World Cup. We were in Rome. And, I have older boys who are soccer fanatics, and they were playing and they were like, no, we have to go watch the game in the piazza with trillions of people. And, my gut was saying, that's pushing it. But again, I got to, practice what I preach. And so we decided we were all going to go and watch this game. And there were lots and lots of people in the middle of this big, piazza outside. And, they had this big screen on, and it was very loud and it was very noisy. And I'll let Alicia take it from there.
So we're in this piazza, and John was starting to get unsettled and everything. So I was like, all right, I'm going to leave with him. We'll come meet up with you guys later. And on our way out, he went and grabbed a girl's hair and pulled her hair like almost to the ground, because he was trying to communicate with me, like, get me out of here. And this person's in my way. I can't get through. And then the girl's boyfriend wanted to like beat John up, and I like
punch him in the face.
Literally, yes. I stepped in. I'm trying to speak to him in Italian, and I'm throwing money at him. I'm just apologizing. But it was like a real eye-opening experience. Like, yes, we can go out in the community and things, but also like know your child's boundaries and what are their triggers, where is the line, when's too far to push them, especially in those situations that are really important to your family.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, luckily she was able to communicate that John had special needs, and we were very, very sorry for the hair pulling, but it does happen. And, and again, like, people always see my pictures on Facebook and they're like, oh, you're so lucky. John's so easygoing. You can take him here and you can go take him there. And you know what? Yes, some of the time. But I think, what we all have to remember is that some of the time shit happens. Excuse my language. It's going to be bad, and it could have been a lot worse if Alicia wasn't able to step in the between there. So it can be scary, and you can see why there's a lot of fear, and you can see why it paralyzes a lot of us. And, I don't want to say that stuff like that never happened. So we wanted to make sure you understood there was definitely some negative sides. But for the most part, the majority of the time, they've been good sides. So I think, a lot of time it's worth the risk. If there's a little voice inside of you saying, man, maybe don't push that one, probably listen to it, because it was a little voice that was telling me that. And I was like, let's try it anyway. One of the biggest celebrations I think that we wanted to share was when John turned 21. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll show it.
So we will show it now. I lied. It says we have to reset it. We're
Okay.
not going to reset.
Sorry.
I've got it on my end. Would
You
you guys
can?
like me to? Yeah, the
Yeah.
one that you emailed me.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, can you
Yeah.
see our screen or no?
Yeah, it's really small. You also
Okay.
got to click the double clicks. I don't know if you did that before you did with the 2 boxes to share your audio. But if not, I can do it on my end as well.
Want to? That would be great.
Sure. Give me 1 second. You'll have to stop share yours for me to do that. Well, I can override you. Sorry. Here we go.
Perfect.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Amy.
Yeah.
Okay. You're
Sure.
welcome.
So you can see, one of the highlights in there was when John turned 21, we wanted to do a big party in Atlantic City, just like you would for any typical child. And, we thought about, can it happen? But the best part about it is, can it happen not just with family, but with friends? And so you can see in a lot of those pictures, there's 2 boys, Maddie and Bahad. And these guys have been friends. Our moms have been friends since they were diagnosed. And so, we have made a point of always getting these boys together throughout the years. And once they hit, 15, 16, actually doing it weekly. So weekly, those boys get together. If we're going to dinner, if we're going to a movie, if we're, just getting together and taking a walk in the park. And again, none of them have a lot of language. Maddie has some, but Bahad and John really not that much. And so when people say, does he have friends? He sure does. Those 2 boys are his friends. And, if they can communicate via language or not, they're smiling. They love enjoying time together. And so for his 21st birthday, we rented a bunch of rooms in Atlantic City, and we rented a suite for the boys. And those 3 boys stayed in a master suite where they were in one room, and Alicia was in the room that was connecting with a big, sort of family room in the middle of it. And then all of the parents and all of my family came, and we had a big dinner in Atlantic City for 20 people. And, they were dancing at the Hard Rock, and they were in the casino gambling. And it was just amazing to see that here are 3 boys with lots and lots of deficits, with barely any language, who have friends and who can celebrate the 21st birthday just like any other child or young adult is celebrating their 21st birthday. And so that party was definitely one of the highlights of, I think, all of our time together. In the picture, in addition to the tantrum to Italy, you can see, I don't know if you saw that picture of John's hands, but as of recent, he has started to engage in some self-injurious behavior, and this is new for John. So, you think you're at 21 and you've made it past that, and you're not going to have any of it. And you know what? Things creep in, things creep out. It's the nature of the disease, unfortunately, but he started to finger pick to a point of blood. And so it's been a rough few months for us. And again, leaning on those supports, working with the school, working with the support coordinator, to really make sure that we have help and strategies to help reduce that. And so again, these things happen. And that's the ugly, is that, things are going to creep in and out. And we just have to remember that that is part of this and part of what we're working through. But we want to highlight all the great stuff and just keep moving towards, trying to get the best that we can out of the family and the and all of our time together. So I want to go on into our ages 16 to 21 is our transition planning years. And I think perhaps these are probably the most important and the most difficult time for any family that has autism. Okay. Because here is when you really start looking about, like, what are their current skills? What can they do? What can't they do? What are their preferences? How do we look and see what they want to do? What kind of goals and dreams do we have for our children when they become adults? And how do we build those skills to make them as independent as they possibly can so that they can reach those goals, right? And then how do we make connections and identify supports and use the resources that are going to be a whole new language for us, right? Once they start hitting 18. And so, there is a few things you can do right when they're starting to 16 to, 18, before they hit 18, is that you really want to start talking to your case manager and your child study team about sampling of different jobs. You want to be registering with, Planning for Adult Life and starting to see all the resources they have. You want to start researching your support coordinator agencies and your service providers and what has to happen for DDD. There's lots of webinars. There's a lot of information for patients, much more than they used to have. So I definitely think that it's a much better time to be able to get information. But I think, again, here is where we start seeing a lot of aggression during puberty. We start seeing onset of seizures. I mean, when I worked at the hospital, I can't tell you how many individuals with autism and families I would meet that they never had seizures. And then once they hit 15, 18, 20, 25, anywhere in that range, they start to have seizure disorder. And it's a very scary thing. And so you want to be really watching and looking and seeing and understanding the medical conditions that go along with this as well. But you want to work on independence. And I think, one of the favorite things, and John comes, we can ask him, is what, we'll always say to John, what do you say to him? And he's like, independent. He's like, how are you doing? And, making sure that he understands that it's fun and successful and positive to do things on your own, and that you're being independent and, small steps to be able to get to a place where they can be much more independent. And then, you want to be thinking about all the functions of learning as they're getting older. Like, am I doing this? What is the goal? What is the function for when I'm 21? So for example, lots of times people say to me, wow, John does a lot of chores. Yeah, he sure does. Because when he's 21 or he's 25 or he's 35, whenever he's going to be living somewhere other than in my house, I want him to be able to know how to empty a dishwasher, how to fold clothes, how to use a vacuum, how to make a bed. And guess what? It took John many, many years to learn those skills, but he is able to do those. I can't remember the last time I folded clothes or emptied a dishwasher. So it's good for you too. One of the things that, Alicia has probably been the best help for me is letting them be more independent. As a mother, you're hovering, you're worried, there's safety, there's all these issues. And, little simple steps, like, for example, when we go to swim practice, I like to go into the bathroom, we go into the, family bathroom, make sure he's getting changed, make sure he's doing that okay. And Alicia's like, stand outside, you let him do it, and you know what? He can now get changed independently before and after swimming. And if I didn't have that nudge telling me, like, don't let him do it, see what he can do, you'd be surprised. They are so much more able to do so much more than we give them credit for. Okay, so things to figure out is, what can your young adult do? What are they successful at? And what do they want to do? And so you want to do a bunch of job sampling. Okay. So you don't want to just say, oh, I want John to work here, and that's it. You want to be able to try a few different things and see how they're doing. Obviously, when they turn 21, you're going to be looking at the Division of Developmental Disabilities, the DDD, and their mission is to assure opportunities to individuals with developmental disabilities to receive quality services and supports to participate in meaningful ways in their communities and to exercise the right to make choices. And again, really important because we want to make sure that those choices are good for that individual, right? They want there to be transparency. You want them to be able to understand, how do we qualify for the DDD? They have, you must get Medicaid first. And there's two programs. There's a sports program, which most people have, and the community care program, which is a high level need. And you have to qualify for residential placements, but it's again, all through the DDD. So what's the roadmap? How do I do this? When do I apply? It's always a question I get. And now that I've done it, you really want to remember. So 16, you start thinking about all these things, you start planning, but it's age 18 that you're going to apply for guardianship. If it's something that you think that your child needs, you're going to apply to SSIs to ensure Medicaid eligibility, because you cannot get your DDD without any of the SSI, or I'm sorry, without the Medicaid eligibility. Okay. And then at age 19 and 20, you're going to start looking at the DDD eligibility. And perhaps the biggest test that you're ever going to have to take with your child or on behalf of your child is going to be that New Jersey CAT. And, you want to make sure that when you're taking that test, that you're researching it. You can look at the sample of the New Jersey CAT online. You can see what the questions look like. It is a mandatory assessment that determines your budget. This is very important because your budget is determined through your answers on that test. Okay. And again, it's very easy to be a little confused by those questions because you want to make sure that you're answering them as independently for your child as they can, right? So John can't tell you what he can and cannot do. So you have to be his voice. Okay. And so much of the time you're a prompt and you don't even realize you're a prompt, right? So just your presence will engage some sort of behavior from your child. And so I remember being at a transition conference years and years ago, and the presenter said, if you were to leave your house, okay, and left your young adult with autism there, what would they do? Would they get dressed? Would they eat? Would they do all the things they do when you were there? Even if you're not saying, go get dressed and go do that, just your presence. And you know what? I remember sitting in that room and John was probably like 15. And I was thinking, John would get up, stay in his pajamas, sit on the couch and eat chips all day. That's what John would do. And so really there is not, that although there's independence, there's still a lot of prompting there. And so you have to think about what can he do? What kind of support does he need? And how do we get him to be as successful as we can as they get older? We want to make sure that the supports program is a Medicaid waiver that provides eligible adults with IDD 21 and older living with their families in a setting to serve them in a way that they can be involved with their community, make choices, provide employment. And so, when you think about where we are with John, I was very fortunate and unfortunate, I guess, because of COVID, John was able to get his extra year. Okay. So he is at school until June. So even though he's 21, he's still in school. However, because he's 21 and we did the New Jersey CAT and we got all of that, he is able to tap into his supports budget. So right now he's kind of living in both worlds. And so I have a fabulous support coordinator. Her name is Tamara, and I use a support brokerage group, Jen, and we are able to utilize our budget to work through, what we need. So right now, Alicia is, hired through our support broker, and she is able to provide support and allow John to do all the things that he loves to do. Okay. And so once John graduates, which will be in June, I don't have an adult program set up. Okay. And I think that that's one of the things I want to stress is that you don't have to be in a day program. Okay. You can use your supports budgets to create a program. And so, I think that, people don't understand that and understand the richness of that. And so, for me, I would love to be able to create John's schedule when he graduates to include those things that he loves, like he can have time to go to basketball, he can play soccer, he can go to the gym, he can do vocational training. He can do volunteering opportunities, and he can do meaningful work. So you can build all of those things into his day so that he can have a very rich life. And so you want to be able to have supports to be able to do that. You want to be able to find the staff that you need to be able to do that, but you want to be able to build it for what works for John. And so,
Amy, did you have a question?
Yes, you guys mentioned support broker. Not everybody knows what that is. And also, could you kind of go into detail a little bit about that, why you decided to do a support broker through the budget, and how that helps to pay for Alicia's services to do community supports for John, and how that helps with your overall plan that you were sharing with us in his life as well?
yeah, sure. So so a support brokerage group is it's an agency that helps utilize your budget that you're given to provide like intensive supports at home. Okay. And so basically, what we do is we talk about like, these are the activities that we would like to be able to do and the hours, and then that can come out of your budget through, this agency. And so that agency then hires their own people, has their own people. But if you have people that you already have a relationship with, like we do with Alicia, she was able to join that agency and then be able to still provide services within our home and after school and in the community. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
You got some questions piling up in here too when you're ready in my chat.
We're going to leave 15 minutes at the
don't
end.
worry, we're getting there. I just wanted to, add a little bit about what does the landscape look like to be able to do that, and, why it's probably not so common, or maybe it is, I don't know. But, basically, when you think about employment for individuals with autism, it's a grim landscape, right? So there's more than 3.5 million Americans who live with autism. Okay, it costs autism services costs us, the United States citizens, $262 billion annually. And the majority of that are for adult services. And the next decade, there's an estimated 700,000 to 1 million teens that will enter adulthood. Okay, and that national data is indicating right now that more than 80 to 90% of those teens or adults are going to be unemployed or underemployed. Okay, so when you look at those numbers, you have to think like, well, why, right? Because the poor outcomes are not necessarily due to the inability of people with autism to do tasks, but rather job opportunities not being made available to them. Okay, and that is a very key point, because just like everything else, you kind of have to build it, right? So you have to show that these individuals with autism can work, and they can be successful, and they can do tasks, and they can do them very, very well. I mean, unfortunately, this should not be the case, but it is. So Beloved Bath is a place where we created to be able to show the world and to show other employers that you can have a successful workforce in this talented pool. And boy, is it a talented pool. Okay. So we started Beloved Bath in 2017. We did it because my business partner and I both have profound young adults on the spectrum, and we knew them finding a job was going to be slim to zero, because even in that 10 to 20% where there are jobs, it's not going to be for our level, right? It's going to be the higher parts, the higher levels and the higher skills, at least people who have more language. And so when we started this company, we did it with the mission to provide meaningful employment for individuals with autism, but we also wanted it to be a place for all levels of autism. Okay. Not just the higher, not just the middle, not just the low. And so, we pride ourselves on having a variation of skill sets and people who come in here and work. So what is Beloved Bath? It is a company that makes, creates, and packages bath and body products such as soap, bath salts, body butters, soap scrubs, as well as candles. Okay. And we found this to be an excellent vocation for individuals with autism because the tasks can be broken down. Not one person has to do it all. Okay. So not one person does the candle from beginning to end. We have some who just wick the jars. We have some who make the candles. We have some who clean the jars. We have some who put the labels on the jars. We have some who stack them on the bookcase. You know, those are all independent jobs, or they could all be one person's job. But the nice thing about this vocation is that the scents, the mixing of ingredients, the step-by-step almost recipe following, it's very sensory in nature. The students and employees find this vocation to be very soothing, relaxing, and very comfortable because they can be successful at it. We observe a lot of satisfaction and pride when people come here. We have an online store. We're in stores, across New Jersey. We're also in, Massachusetts. We're out in California. We really have been able to grow. And not only do we have adults who are over 21 coming in and getting paid, they get paid minimum wage, and we have people who are in like a manager or a lead position that get paid more, who are helping train some of the others who come in. So right now, how does that fit in with John, and how does it fit in with the students? So we do have 4 schools right now who are bringing in students throughout the day as part of their sampling. So these are kids that are in the 16 to 21 age group, and they're coming in and they're learning some of the skills of what we do here, but they're also learning the soft skills. How do we follow directions? How do we sit and wait our turn? How do we sign into the book? How do we sign out of the book? How do we stop and take a break? I mean, those skills, no matter where they go, if they live if they work at Beloved Bath, or if they work somewhere else, those are skills that they're going to take with them. And we're happy to say that we already have 2 employees who have left us and gone on to other jobs and been very successful. And one went on to a full-time job. So very, very happy about that. So that's the vocational piece. So for John, because he's still in school, he comes 2 days after school during the week, and sometimes on the weekends, depending how much of a need we have. So, what have I learned since opening Beloved Bath? 1, I have learned that individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities are capable and able. Okay. Sometimes they need a little bit more training up front. However, long-term productivity outcomes are the same, if not better. Okay. We had a young girl, Michelle, who came in yesterday. She's 30. She lives in a group home right by here in Beloved Bath. She came in, she was here for 2 hours. I think she put together over, 200 boxes. Okay. In those 2 hours, totally independently, boxes that we're doing for a package. Today we had JP come in. He wicked all of those candles, which I think are 170 candle jars. Okay. And you know what? These guys, we have to tell them to take a break because they just want to keep on working, and they're so happy with what they're doing. How do I know they're happy? People always ask me that. Sometimes they're smiling. Sometimes they're telling me. Today, Paul, one of our newer employees, said to me, I love working here. And it's just like melts your heart. And so there is a lot to be said about, giving these young adults the opportunity. And so, what we've also seen is that there's no drama. There's no lying. Okay. People take pride in their work. They're here. They're honest. They're happy to be here. There's pure joy in doing something very productive. We need more opportunities like this. We need to open doors for more young adults to be able to join the workforce. We see friendships. I mean, part of what we do here is we make sure that we try to pair people with the sort of the same skill level on the same days. And so we'll have, people who have a lot of language coming in at the same time so they can chit chat and they can have breaks together. And then we have others who maybe don't, but they're still sitting next to each other and they're working together. And so we see some real relationships that we're building here, and then we're making opportunities for them to do them outside of here. So sometimes we'll go out to dinner after we're working here on a Thursday night, or sometimes we just started a basketball league on Tuesday nights in the local church here. And a lot of the kids from Beloved Bath are going there together. And so there's a lot that you get out of work besides just work. So here is John. John, can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi, John.
Hi.
And so second part of what we did in the business is that we started a charitable foundation. And the point of the charitable foundation is to be able to make sure that we're doing education and we're offering social skills that empower individuals with autism to lead the most fulfilling and independent lives that they can. So we do activities every month. We did, we boxed up food for a food pantry. We did a basketball league. We're doing a talent show, but we are also educating the community at large on how to get the most fulfilling and rich experience with your individuals and kids with autism And also, how do we get other employers to see that this is a good business opportunity and that we can provide a financial stable model that allows this workforce to have opportunities. And so we are mentoring other businesses who want to do this, who want to integrate this, talented pool into their workforce. And we are also looking at grants to be able to help people with seed money to start businesses like Beloved Bath. And so it's a little bit about the Charitable Foundation. It's a little bit about Beloved Bath. It's a lot of information. So we would like to open it up for Q&A, and I hope you enjoyed our talk.
Thank you, ladies. So informative. I have a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to go back here. Okay, let's see. Where did they go? What was the most helpful resource and service that you received in the transition process or at any point in the system itself?
I mean, I think the most important I received was about applying for DDD and applying for SSI and Medicaid and guardianship, because all of those things have so many steps in the process. And so, again, looking at the resources, when to do it, how to do it. I mean, I think, like I said, it always sticks in my head about how that New Jersey CAT is so important, because that budget is for the rest of John's life. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get it reevaluated. If you get a budget that you don't think fits their needs, you can try to appeal it, but it's a long, hard process. And it's usually a costly process if you need to get an attorney. And so you really want to make sure that you're familiar with the questions, you're thinking about, how to answer it in a way that really is true to what your child can and cannot do.
Great answer. Thank you. Also, side note on that, I put a link in the chat to a sample. It's a folder. It contains a sample of the NJCAT, so you know in advance what questions they ask. It also has a sample appeal if you find that the results of the NJCAT were not to your satisfaction. There's some tips in there on how you can appeal that as well. Next question, ladies. Did you access FSO, Family Support Organization services in your county and or care management organization, CMO? And if you did you find them helpful?
So I did not personally, but I am helping a friend of mine who has a 20-year-old with autism whose husband died of cancer a few years ago, and their CMO has been extremely helpful for them. And so, again, I can't speak of it for experience, but I've been on a lot of those phone calls to support this family, and I have found them to be very successful and very helpful.
Thank you. Next question. What was the most difficult part of the transition process for you and your family?
I think the most difficult is just learning everything. I mean, you feel like when you first get the diagnosis, there's so much to learn, right? You have to learn about the education systems, the different types of therapies, and, how to get into all these programs. And then you're good, you're stable for all these years. And then you're hitting 18, 19, and you have a whole new language to learn. You have to learn, everything, New Jersey CAT, DDD, guardianship, SSI, Medicaid. And so it's a lot of information. And so my suggestion is to really talk to someone who's done it. And I'm more than happy to, be a mentor to anybody who needs help, because it really is a lot, and it's a lot of calls, and it's a lot of follow-up, and there's lots to access. You have the PPP program, there's just so many, and everything's an initial, by the way. So
yes, it's alphabet soup. Yes. I appreciate you volunteering, but there's going to be a lot of people seeing this, so we might want to also let them know they can go to SPAN too, because you might have a full-time job, Pat, with being a mentor. Next question I have is, knowing what you know now, if you could go back and redo a part of the transition process, what would it be and why?
If I could go back and redo part of the transition process. I don't know. I mean, I have to say I was very lucky because I was very supported. I mean, I really did use other families who had gone through it. I mean, I did get a budget that I thought was right for John. I did, I guess, probably a little bit more work on the support coordination agencies, because there's a lot out there. And so you really want to be asking the right questions and finding people who are knowledgeable in your district, in your area. But I do think that there's not too much I would want to redo. I feel like I was very fortunate to have a really good transition and to get the extra year. I mean, that I feel like was just a blessing.
Very helpful info. I'm going to jump ahead because you mentioned finding a support coordination agency. So I'm going to ask this question in the chat, and then I'm going to go back to another. Do you have any advice on how to look for a good support coordination agency since you recently have gone through the process?
Yeah, so actually the ARC does meet your support coordinator night, and I went to 3 of them. You know, I started going when John was like 17 or 18, and I would just go to table and like just talk to people who were there, ask there's a helpful cheat sheet list of questions to ask. That you can print out, and I would take that with me and I would ask all those questions, and and then I would actually take that list home and I would rank them, and the next time I went I'd re-rank them. And so you kind of have to just keep exploring. It's like everything else, like finding a good babysitter, finding a good person, is you want to keep asking all the right questions and see how they answer them. And I would really just ask examples like, if I needed John to do this, like, how would you help me? Or what could you do? Just ask those kinds of very pointed questions. But I do know there's a growing wealth of them. There's many more than there ever were. And so, I think part of it is that you do your research, but part of it is also, finding the good match. And if it's, I so far, like I said, even though the first one wasn't a great match, they were very helpful. I just think the second match was good for our family.
Yeah, great advice. There are 186 support coordination agencies right now. So it's a lot of choice, and not all of them are able to attend or are invited to the ARC's participation for that Meet Your Support Coordinator event. So I always, connecting with so many families, I always hear the most common advice from them is to ask others what they use and what they like about them, and then interview them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I shared that with everyone. I also shared that in the chat, but I also like your feedback and response, because it's very interactive, what you're saying, Pat, and really engaging within the community as well, because you'll start to learn other things and learn about other resources as well that you may not have had access to.
Yeah.
Okay, next question for you is, do you need to have an acuity factor in your tier to be able to hire a BCBA through the DDD supports brokerage?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think so. But it does reflect, I think the level, it does reflect their pay scale. So I think there's different pay scales, and it's based on, what their level of education and expertise is. So you could probably hire them at a higher pay scale. I don't necessarily know if the acuity factor makes a difference.
Yeah, I do know that it's a service that is funded through DDD's budget, the supports program.
Mm-hmm.
But I know also, we were talking about how Alicia is the BCBA, and so that is a unique experience for Pat and John in this particular situation. Yes. Alicia is his direct support professional, also called a self-directed employee, as hired through a supports brokerage agency paid for the DDD budget. And she also happens to have the bonus of being a BCBA as well. So
yes.
You guys are really lucky.
Very lucky. And I think that's the other thing too, to keep in mind, is that, John's had a home program for a very long time, and all of the therapists that are in there have worked with our family for a very long time. I mean, we've had, one of the therapists has been there since he came in and did the evaluation with John. And then the other one was the very first person I ever hired. And she literally just did her defense on Monday and got her PhD. And then the third person that was in my house got her BCBA 6 months ago. But again, they didn't come in having that. And I think, one of the things that we forget is that our children inspire people to want to go on to higher education and to, work harder and learn more. And I think that that's really an added benefit, for them and for us.
Definitely. Next question is, how can one seek employment at Beloved Bath? I think you guys have a wait list, right?
Yes, unfortunately we do have a wait list, but you can send me an email at pat@Beloved Bath, because I keep a big long list here, and as opportunities open up, and especially Q4 is our busiest season. Like, we literally make 75% of our sales in the fourth quarter. And so we bring in a lot of extra people, even if it's just, for a few months and get to know them. And, again, we're hoping to keep growing and we're hoping to potentially have other satellites. And so hopefully everybody on that waiting list to come in, like Paul, who I was just talking about, just came off our waiting list and just started last week. And so there are opportunities that come in and out.
Excellent. One more question. And then I'm going to also put your website in the chat for people and a resource link. You had mentioned earlier about different resources that you were using. For example, there's like the cheat sheet of questions to ask for support coordinators when you're selecting one and interviewing them. So we have a curated content list of over 30 resources that I can share with you guys that I made for Values into Action. And it has all of that in there, the NJCAT stuff in there. I mean, everything that Pat and Alicia have talked about today. Okay, next question is, what county do you live in? Did you find it that your area was helpful for your son and the transition process?
So I live in Essex County. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think all the counties are as helpful. I find like, I have found that, the transition meetings being very helpful and going for years, because I think one of the things, and I've spoken to other moms about this, is that, you have to sort of hear things several times and every year you go, there's a change, so things change. It went from fee for service to this, to that, there's constant changes. And so you don't want to just go in those conferences when it's the year you need it. You want to start going like, 4 or 5 years ahead of time, knowing there'll be changes. But the more you hear things, I can vividly recall when I was taking the New Jersey CAT, hearing the presenters' voices in my head. Okay, because I had gone to so many conferences. And so things just sort of, seep in and it helps you recall that information when you need it, when it's years down the road.
Thank you. Last question I have in the chat is, do you hire students for the summer only?
So right now we don't, and all of the students that are coming in come through their schools. Okay, so it's like a vocational job sampling. And so they actually come in vans with their teachers, and there's usually a bunch of them that come in at the same time. And so, it's just, because it's easier for them to be able to bring more than one child at a time. And it's sort of easier for us to have those groups in here at the same time with the teachers that know them best. And so we don't, again, we're hoping to grow one day to be able to have more opportunities, but you always feel free. You can send me an email. It's Pat@Beloved Bath if there's questions about it. And like I said, it's ever changing.
Thank you. I put your email in the chat, Pat.
Thanks.
That's all the questions I have in the chat. I've loved this presentation. This was so inspiring. I love your story, John's story, your family story, and how you've incorporated Alicia into the family. It's just, thank you so much for sharing and being so transparent and vulnerable as well, and sharing some of the challenges that you experience as family members with John.
Well, thanks for having us, and thanks for listening to our story.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of thank yous in the chat. I'm also seeing there was one excellent, thank you, all exclamations. And another thank you as well. So this workshop, as we mentioned, is recorded. It'll be live. It will be on the YouTube channel by November. You can reach out to us via our email system, as well as Pat's email. And tomorrow, our next workshop is at 10 a.m. You all are welcome to join. And both of you are also invited to our open Q&A forum if you'd like to participate. We're inviting attendees from the workshops to join us if they want any one-on-one support, if they have any additional questions they thought of after the workshops. It's Friday from 12 to 2. I know that you both work, so if you're not able to join, we completely understand. If anybody has direct questions for you, I'll record them and share them with you if you're not present. Thank you for volunteering to be a mentor too, by the way, Pat, for families in transition. One more thing came through the chat. It says, great job and thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, ladies. Have a great rest of your night.
You too.
Thank you.